Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur. Want to talk today about residential schools. Haven't done that in a while. Academic freedom is up there as well. Wokeism, free speech. And before we jump into this deep tunnel here, this deep well, don't forget to hit subscribe and tell your friends about us as well. Always appreciate that. Our guest today, joining us from Calgary, is Dr. Frances Widdowson. She is a former Mount Royal University professor. Now, the university ended up firing her, so a bit of a recap here. She's often labeled as as a number of things, but as being a residential school denier. She believes that these schools actually, did have some positive outcomes for students, okay? And I've talked to a number of people who've attended residential schools who say the same thing. And again, was this really a form of genocide? Okay, so that's all part of this debate here. She's been visiting a number of universities to try to engage in conversations, question and answer with students about this. And unfortunately, they typically seem to respond with a mob mentality, yelling insults, beat drums, make lots of noise, that sort of thing. And sometimes there's even physical violence involved. So we've got a lot to talk about today, right? So how do we go forward from here? In a way that would be reasonable and that would make sense and that would actually bring about some sort of a reconciliation, some goodness out of all of this, okay? And truth. There's something about a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The truth part needs to be there as well, okay? Just saying. All right, Dr. Widdowson, good to have you with us again.
Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, let's get right to it. You recently got... I should point out your website. And again, this is actually good reading, I think, for everybody on either side to take a look at this. wokeacademy.info. All right. And you just got escorted off the campus at the University of Lethbridge. Of course, I'm based out of the Lethbridge area here. And you were engaging in what you call spectrum street epistemology. So this is, I think, basically a kind of a question and answer sort of thing, right? Can you describe what happened at this event here?
So I was invited to come to the University of Lethbridge by Tony Hull, who is a professor emeritus from the university. And Tony and I have known each other for a few years. We met actually at the last breakdown of civilization at the University of Lethbridge in 2023. And Tony has written material. He's a Native American Studies professor who has written materials on the residential schools being genocidal. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to investigate that claim, which is, of course, the opposite of my own. And we didn't announce it. We didn't publicize it because I didn't want to have a meltdown similar to what has happened in the past. And when I started doing the live stream, a student came up and we were having a wonderful interaction about the question of whether the residential schools were genocidal. And
so there was a good conversation going on there initially?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And just to clarify, the other professor has differing views than you do. So,
yes.
Well, and what a concept. I mean, what do they think is going on at university? They shouldn't be doing those things.
You can't question it. That's basically their attitude, is that the truth is known and you must submit. And if you don't, we're going to assault you. Like, that is basically the position. Anyway, as I was talking to this very nice student, he thought the residential schools were genocidal, and he was asking me why I differed. We noticed that there's more and more students coming and starting to make noise and so on, and then they became so loud that it really basically became impossible to continue the conversation. And then they got more and more obnoxious, more and more aggressive, and the security became involved, and then the police came in, and the things that went on are absolutely shocking. There's quite a lot of footage that we're gathering right now. The police, there was about 10 police at one point, basically encircling us, preventing this mob from tearing us to shreds, I guess. These drummers were behind me, banging their drums so loud I could feel the wind on my hair. So I said to the police officer, Can you please move them back? That's damn, like I'm getting my eardrums blown out here with this drumming. And the police officer I knew the name of, and I'm making a complaint to the Lethbridge police, said, if you touch the drummers, I'll charge you with assault. That's what he said to me. And did nothing about them beating my eardrums out with their violence. Like, this is assault, what is happening. The students just tore up the table, ripped up Tony's material, stole my backpack, stole my street epistemology mats. I was trying to write things on a pad. They ripped the pad out of my hand. They chased Tony. So I got arrested and dragged out.
Did they actually arrested you?
Yes. They charged me with trespass. Well, they said it was trespass, but then they dropped the charges immediately. And as they took me out, they left Tony by himself. And this group of thugs surrounded him and harassed him and roughed him up and pushed him outside, so he fell on the concrete.
So would that not be assault?
Definitely.
Yeah.
They do nothing. The police do nothing about these out-of-control students. The worst thing that we found out was the reason why all those students came over to where we were was because the president or the administration sent out an email to all employees, all students, saying that a controversial figure was on campus, and that was going to be saying upsetting and.
Oh my! So, I guess so. Perhaps in the university's view, they're protecting the students by warning them of the danger that you posed by having this conversation with people who disagreed with you. And instead, what resulted out of that email was a mass turnout of students who, basically, had this noisy, chaotic protest there. So did that make it any safer for anybody? I would argue perhaps not.
No, it fomented this mob, and the University of Lethbridge needs to be investigated for what they did and what they're doing, which has no respect whatsoever for the academic side of the university. It is about pandering and coddling this indigenization activist element, and these students are very, very firm in their view that you should not be able to discuss this claim about whether the residential schools are genocidal or not. And this is a very, very important claim for Canadians to figure out whether this is the case or not. And the fact that you have university administration discouraging this from happening is absolutely shameful, and hopefully they will be held to account for what they've done.
Kind of doubt it, but I hope so.
Well, the government must become involved. Where is Daniel Smith? Daniel Smith, the Conservatives passed the Chicago Principles Directive. The University of Lethbridge is under that directive, and this directive says that no view people should not be prohibited from having views, even if they're regarded as being offensive and so on. So,
this is a good opportunity for viewers then to say, what can we do, right? If you're agreeing with our guest here, Dr. Widdowson, contact your MLA. And, contact Danielle Smith, our education minister, as well. This matters, actually, doesn't it? To me, it sends... when I see universities doing this, and of course, it's not just the U of L, it's University of Victoria, University of Winnipeg, whatever, a whole bunch of universities, very similar mindsets, is it sends a message to our students. They're teaching them that basically if somebody disagrees with you, call them names, shout them down, don't engage in any kind of meaningful conversation. There's no debate here. You're right, they're wrong, and let's be bullies together. It's all for the common good, right? Like, where does that come from? Rather than engaging in, again, meaningful debate where we can challenge one another's ideas.
It comes from the universities. It comes from the unions and universities. It comes from the administration. And they are failing. They are massively failing in their academic mission. And if the government cares about the academic integrity of its universities, it needs to hold a public inquiry to examine what has gone wrong. Because it's not just University of Lethbridge, as you said. Any university that I will try to go to now is going to have the same reaction,
Yep.
because the presidents of these universities are not providing students with the proper messaging, which is,
Hmm.
this is an academic institution. This is where we discuss ideas, even if those ideas are controversial. And if you try to shut down the discussion, you will be expelled.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's what they need to say to these students, but they won't do it because
I
they're
wonder if
just.
any of the presidents of a university would be willing to come on this program or some other program and just have a discussion back and forth on this. You think they'd be up for it, or would
Not in a million years. Not in a
they'd
million
recuse
years.
themselves somehow, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Yeah. But that's why you need a public inquiry, because they'll be
Wow.
forced to defend themselves in a
Hmm.
public inquiry, and they won't be able to hide behind their public relations
Well,
offices.
they tend to release statements, but if they were in a media scrum where you didn't have a woke media and they were asked the tough questions, what would happen then, right? So, what's the next step with the U of L? What would you like to see them change? And I guess what's your next step with these universities?
So things are getting very, very difficult to go into these universities now, and I now have several cases. University of Winnipeg being one of the worst, Thompson Rivers being one of the better ones, although still got problems. All the scenes, all the discussions. So I'm currently doing documentaries with Simon Harrigot, who is an incredible videographer from Kamloops,
Okay.
and we're doing a documentary now on the Kamloops case, and universities are a big part of that story. But I would also like to do a documentary with him on the universities and the decline of the university. So that's kind of the next step. I really, going into these universities is just taking a massive toll, and it's just becoming, quite frankly, just
Yeah.
untenable and dangerous. So that's kind of the plan for the next 6 months, I guess. And maybe after six months, we can think, well, maybe go back in and see if anything's changed. But I want the government to hold a public inquiry on what's happened to universities, because all the universities in Alberta are in trouble, and they don't allow for open and honest discussion on a wide range of topics. And it's
Yeah.
not just the residential schools and Indigenous policies, it's things like trans activism, which is a disaster as well. And these things have serious public policy consequences. This muzzling of academics is that you just don't have the knowledge that is able to be disseminated when you have this kind of system of fear, where professors fear that they're going to be targeted and pushed out of the universities.
Yeah, that is a huge problem. The fear tactics here. Essentially, I think a lot of the politicians aren't willing to speak up because it will likely cost them some votes. Mainstream media jumps on this, right? If you dare say anything good about a residential school. And again, just to make the record clear here, from all the things I've read on your views on this, you're not denying that there were some serious issues, some problems. There were abuses towards Native students in that is Indian residential school system. Yes, that did happen, but you're also saying it wasn't genocidal, and in fact, in many cases, it was actually quite helpful for the Indian community. So, but to dare say that, you risk being labeled as a racist, and you get called racist all the time. So somehow, how do we, with that kind of a tension there, this fear, no wonder people aren't willing to speak up, right? We all want to be virtue signaling.
Yeah, like my views, just to clarify, I think that there were educational benefits that were provided.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that there were a lot, reading and writing, for example. But there was a lot of neglect. There was a lot of problems with the buildings. There was
Yeah.
not the best quality teaching and so on. But you had a lot of challenges too, which people need to consider. Remote locations, these kinds of things. So the main issue that I am pursuing now is the Kamloops case, and the claim that the remains of 215 children have been confirmed at Kamloops, which is a false claim. And many, many students, when you ask them, think that remains actually have been found. And so I go around asking them, what is the evidence for that? And they seem to think that GPR indicates remains, which GPR does not. It's highly
ground penetrating radar.
Yes, right? Ground penetrating radar. It's highly improbable that there are remains there, because not one parent has said that their child never came home from the Kamloops Senior Residential School. And the 82 children that we have documented, which are not often didn't die at the schools, they died in accidents and all sorts of things. We know the cemeteries where those children are buried. So it's not a mystery. No one's asking, where is child X? No, there's nothing like that. So this claim, we must have truth about Kamloops. If we can't have truth about Kamloops, we're not going to be able to have truth about anything. And that's the main thing that I want to discuss. And of course, the genocide allegation is directly related to Kamloops, because you had people saying in 2021, what else could explain 215 children being buried clandestinely in this apple orchard if some kind of genocidal action hadn't happened? So it's kind of wound up, but that's really what I want to pursue.
And people
right now.
get quite upset when you say these things, but they shouldn't. In fact, they should be upset the way the whole thing was handled without any kind of investigative reporting. I mean, these are claims made, again, based on ground-penetrating radar. When you speak to the experts, they'll tell you they don't know if there's actually even graves there. There apparently was a sewage system going through there, which would account for a lot of the anomalies that turned up on the radar. Doesn't mean there was even graves, and certainly doesn't necessarily mean that there were bodies buried there. So these are facts matter, don't they? I mean, so
yes. And
now
this documentary.
and $12 million was given out by the government of Canada. I'm guessing did it go directly to the tribe, to the band? It
went to, they tell us, Blacklock's Reporter, which is the entity that is doing a lot of investigation on this. They got 280 pages of emails, and they discovered that the money went to publicists and consultants. That's where the money went.
$12 million. That's crazy. Now, this is supposed to be for excavation of the graves, right?
Yes.
If there are graves, excavation of the grounds, I guess, around the school, and then we could find out for sure, right? But nothing has happened so far. $12 million, I don't know if it's gone or if it's still there to some degree. But I mean, if we're serious about this, then dig it up and then we can go from there, right?
Exactly. And Blacklock's has documents coming out on February 20th, which are on the progress activity reports on the DNA and forensic analysis. So and there's 600 pages of emails that are going to be released on February 20th.
Wow. Okay. So again, if you're just tuning in, I want to steer you to Dr. Francis Widdowson's website, wokeacademy.info. Lots of information there on this topic. And again, I don't want to come across as saying that residential schools were great for everybody. Obviously, they were not. But again, I know firsthand from talking to people who did attend that there were positive experiences as well. So we should be able to have this conversation in Canada without being labeled as racist. And we just have to shout one another down. That's beyond ridiculous. Okay? We should be able to have healthy, robust debates back and forth on this issue here. And a big part of this is academic freedom. Now, again, maybe an update here with Mount Royal University. Again, you were a professor there before. And so you just had a hearing here, I think a couple of days ago, as of the date of this taping here today. And this was, I think, a judicial hearing regarding the fact that MRU did not reinstate you to the university. And so where do we go from here?
So on February 6th, Friday, we went through before the Alberta Labor Relations Board with my union, its lawyer presenting our arguments, and MRU presenting its arguments. And MRU's arguments were ridiculous. And we got them to say what they thought, which we never, that's the problem. You can never pin Mount Royal down on what it actually thinks that I've done, which is so heinous that I can't be reinstated as a professor. And we found out, which is that I criticized my union for not representing me fairly, that I criticized my colleagues for trying to get me fired and, instigating a anonymous student group against me, and that most surprisingly, I say that I will fight to the end to make Mount Royal an academic space once more. They seem to be opposed to me involving myself in trying to do that, which was pretty shocking to hear that. So I'm hoping that sanity will eventually prevail. And the labor board is going to look at these arguments and look at the submissions and then make a decision in 90 days as to whether my case should be reconsidered by another arbitrator, because the arbitrator that looked at the case, David Philip Jones, was imperious and inept and provided no legal reasons for why I should not be reinstated. So I think he did an absolutely terrible job. But because he's revered in the labor relations framework, I don't know whether the labor board will defer to him or not, or what's going to happen. But at least I got MRU to say why they don't think I should be reinstated. And I've got all the notes taken, and I'm going to publicize that and just show people how absurd everything has been for the last 5.5 years.
Well, obviously the arbitrator isn't here on the program to defend himself, so I'll have to leave it there. But
you look at his decision. You should look at his decision.
Well, of course, his decision is certainly there, and I'm not sure if he's going to be the same arbitrator who works for the labor board, but the labor board is going to have some sort of a decision on this coming up. I think you said within 90 days. So the key part about this, though, is, let me ask you this, I guess. If they rule against you and do not reinstate you, what message does that send to, professors and educators across our nation?
It means that universities are over, because academic freedom no longer exists. And if you discuss ideas that are upsetting to people like Gabrielle Weaselhead and Mary Lee Mulholland, trans activists and indigenization activists, they will force you out, and your union and the whole labor relations regime will not protect you from those kinds of actions. And that's what happened to me. And people who don't like me and all these sorts of things, that doesn't matter. What matters is you should be able to discuss controversial ideas in a university without the threat of losing your job. And because that happened to me, it's going to happen to many more people. And it's just a terrible precedent that has been set for other professors.
And that's my main concern here as well, the message that will send. Is this what we want to have happen in our higher institutions of learning, that we can't have robust, healthy debates, that we can't disagree passionately? If you do, then we'll just kick you out. That's cancel culture, right? And we have this happening, of course, in our political realms as well. NDP MP Leah Gazan has once again reintroduced, I guess. This time it's Bill C-254. Basically, this would make it a criminal code offense to willfully promote hatred against Indigenous people. Now, then you need to go a step further. What does that mean? By condoning, denying, justifying, or minimizing the facts about residential schools. So in other words, if you have any kind of criticism of the residential, or if you deny in some form, that residential schools weren't genocide or whatever it might be here. Maybe you disagree with the Kamloops grave claims. Then you're going to go to jail? Is this where we're at in Canada?
Yeah. Well, Leah Gazan herself, an absolute embarrassment of a politician, has said that the bodies of children have been found at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. So she is spreading misinformation herself, yet she wants anyone who critically analyzes her claims to be put in jail. And this is an astonishing situation to be happening in Canada. I'm surprised that there isn't just a massive uproar about this kind of thing being proposed. Hopefully the government is not interested in proceeding, but I guess we're going to find out. But it's a bit of a sign of the emerging totalitarianism in Canada that this kind of thing is being entertained.
Yeah, that's a great concern to me when I see these kinds of bills being introduced. Again, where it's just cancel culture on steroids, basically, if you will. So basically, we're in a situation here where we maybe don't have as much clout as we'd like to in this one. The odds are stacked against free speech, it seems. But what can we do here? Any thoughts on this, Dr. Widdowson?
Well, there's the cultural change that needs to happen. The universities, in terms of the government intervention, that's something major that can happen. So if the government decides to enforce its free speech directive, then we could see some change. But of course, there's the cultural problems where we need to get people to understand that freedom of speech is a fundamental value, because it's the value that allows us to determine all other values. And if we don't have freedom of speech and people aren't able to discuss things to sort out their differences, then the alternative to that is violence. And that's the path that we are now heading down. So people need to take this very seriously. And I don't think that they are. The pursuit of truth is also, a very, very important factor.
I've got to leave it there because I'm right out of time. Dr. Widdowson, thank you so much again. wokeacademy.info. Thanks for watching. Call your MLA on this one as well, please, or the Premier. All right, WizeUp.ca.